Intel World Open. We're 2 weeks into the qualifiers. That means Open is closed, and we're chugging along. I'm your host, Tom F. Battinger. I've got an analyst, Jar of Jam, next to me. We are going to break down all of the action as these players have been going back and forth. As I said, I'm your host. I'll be hanging out here. I'm F. And there's a lot of teams that have already qualified and some teams that just got through. We're going to cover all the action, some of the action from last week, and then look forward to next week. Jar of Jam, glad to have you alongside me. How you feeling, bud?
As always, it is a pleasure, F. We have started this tournament pretty strong. First week has been great. Second week, I feel like even pumped up the level of just the whole action as a whole. So I'm looking forward to getting through exactly what happened during the first week, as well as the spicy moments from the second week as well.
Yeah, I think it's been kind of fun looking at all these teams. Some familiar. We've got big land masses like Brazil and US where we see some of the same teams. Not all the same teams, but some of them. And then we've got places like Europe where everything is mixed up in comparison to what we've seen in the RLCS, the Rocket League Pro League. And so with respect to that, Jam, I think that looking towards who qualified last week, or perhaps more importantly, who didn't qualify last week, this show is going to be just as fun.
Well, yeah, we are going to go through everything that pertains to the qualified teams. Those who may have made it, and you'll be surprised that they didn't, as well as some of the surprising names just in general. As a whole, IWO is a host to a slew of teams, countries from all around the world, so there's going to be a couple of surprises, even for the most dedicated fans of Rocket League.
Well, like I said, the open qualifiers are done. That means the closed qualifiers are on their way, and eventually we'll get to finals. That's a whole lot. If you're unfamiliar, don't worry. We've got you covered. Let's take a look at the format for the Intel World Open.
The Intel World Open is here. Do you have what it takes to lay claim to the trophy for your region? The online competition is broken up into 3 stages beginning in June: open qualifiers, closed qualifiers, and the regional finals. First, you'll have to fight through one of the 2 open qualifier tournaments in June. Each region is split into different countries and territories to form 21 different best-of-3 double elimination tournaments, with multiple opportunities for you and your team to qualify. The 4 winning teams from each country or territory will then advance to the closed qualifiers in late June and face off this time in a best-of-5 double elimination bracket. The winning team from each country or territory will advance to the final stage, the regional finals, taking place in July. The regional finals open with a round-robin group stage. The best performing teams will advance to the playoff bracket, where one team from each region will become the first ever Intel World Open champions. Be sure to register and get ready for the action on intelworldopen.gg.
Well, there you have it. The format kind of locked and loaded. And I mean, frankly speaking, like I said, this is one of the cooler parts of our tournament here. When we watch Pro Rocket League, we generally see kind of the same regions. One, we get to see brand new regions, well, regions that have been playing that we don't normally get to see. And 2, we get to see sort of a different world where open qualifiers, anyone could have signed up, and they did.
Well, yeah, as it stands, I'm just looking at the whole slew of the teams that are currently available for us to play, to just show themselves, and it is fantastic. That is my most favorite part of the tournament for sure, is the fact that we're going to see teams from Central America, from South America that we usually do not see as per usual. As you can see, there is a whole selection, not just the usual likes of Brazil and Argentina, for example, from South America, but Chile is joining the fray. 2 more teams from the rest of the qualifiers. Of course, the Caribbean Basin also participating in it. And there are actually a couple of very surprising teams. The whole Europe is a wild, open space for us. So many teams to get through. For Asia, of course, you have Japan and the rest. And there are actually also a couple of surprises. We're going to get to that just a little bit later. And even for Asia, Maritime, and Oceania, yes, Australia, yes, New Zealand. You're familiar with those teams, but it's going to be those interesting surprises, little teams from here and there that you usually would not be able to see. As you said, Avdat, just for the fact that they've never been participating in the big top leagues.
I've always got my eyes on ME and A, the Middle East and the African regions, of course. So some underdeveloped regions with respect to Rocket League, some unknown players, which is a very different story from what we've seen out of North America. So the teams that have qualified are pretty much the big cheeses. We've got the big guys on board. America is literally the team name from America that features some of the top players. And then we've got Yazo as well, who really, really have done a strong representation of this region. Like I said, the biggest names in this region making a stance.
Yeah, no doubts about that. The two teams, rather, that qualified through the first qualifier last week for Canada and America are really the favorites for the whole region. First Killer, Garrett G and Chicago on the side of America, they should be the favorite for really the whole region as a whole. Garrett G is current world champion. He's currently on NRG, which is the best team in North America as well.
Fighting words.
Yeah, well, I mean, fight me in comments on Twitter, anywhere, at me. Well, at him for the best part. And Yazo, of course, Squishy, JNups, and Illusion. And these are really the cream of the crop from Canada. And for Squishy, this would be eventually, during the regionals, the first chance for him to play his teammate Garrett G again. Last time that happened, it was still season 8 a year ago.
Wow.
Rather, season 9. And he's another champion for world champion back in season 6, so this is going to be incredibly cool to see. For Canada, the rest though, Freshness, Rodoko, and Sosa for Team Canada, and Washed Up and Mirage are gonna this is just a little bit later. I'm jumping ahead of myself. This is still going to happen just a little bit later.
Well, when it comes down to it, notable exception is Justin. He's taking the summer off, which I think is a smart idea for him, but smart idea for everybody to kind of show up and do what they can, because this is a tough tournament where everybody wants to stand up tall. And so all the big teams kind of qualified with North America and Canada in mind. Europe was very different. When we looked at Europe, a lot of people that you might have expected, like, oh yeah, of course, they didn't make it through the first qualifier, but that's why it's a good thing for fans that we have a second qualifier.
Indeed. You look at France, most importantly, and this was the France that has surprised us the most. As it stands, the first two teams that had got through were Atlanta Wave and Raging Raccoons. And you would ask, Raging Raccoons? Who exactly? I want to see my Team BDSs. I want to see my Team Vitalities. Well, not there, not through the first qualifier. So for France, already an incredibly talented region, already having so many quality players that you can make 10 teams easily and pack them with the top league as well. No, they did not make it, and so it was a big question, a big task for all of them to all of a sudden to go through next time. But the quality has prevailed, it feels like, Avdot, and the best teams on the day did get the spots.
Not just France, but also Spain. Itachi and Marked by 8's team is another squad that you might just auto got in. Not the case here. This team also kind of missed the bar to qualify, but like I said, there is a second week of qualifiers. That has just been locked in. We're going to talk about that today, and all three of these teams signed up and got another shot. So we might just be talking about them qualifying, yet they did. So we'll go into depth about that a little bit later. You can exhale your favorite players certainly kind of making the mark there with respect to Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And so as we shift gears over there into sort of the rest of the world with respect to Asia Maritime and even Asia Mainland, this is something, so the enthusiasts know some of these teams and know where they're kind of rocking out. And if they know, then these results are exactly what you might have expected.
Yeah, if you haven't been following the region at all, you would see that the best teams from Japan, from Indonesia, from Malaysia have made it through. So the favorites did make a spot. We're going to talk about it just a little bit later. There are a couple of exceptions. For the most part, you've got your Tokyo Verde with Realize for Japan. You've got your Broccoli from Indonesia. Fantastic name for the team and everything else. So no surprises there, although obviously there's going to be a couple of interesting matchups further on heading into the regional as they're going to be playing each other, because I always love to see those regions playing versus each other. Usually they only play against one another inside their own country. So here it's going to be just another little championship between them. Who is going to be the best in the region? And if we just go down just a little bit for, of course, the Asia Maritime and Oceania, Australia was the big surprise last week, rather the first week, since your expected teams did not qualify. Ground Zero, Cringe Society, did not make it. Instead, it was the lower seeded teams that really weren't the first on the list. You have to go down quite a lot to even find them, but there might be something for you later on. Sorry, we're still incredibly horrible at keeping the secrets. That's actually what happened during the second qualifier.
No secrets. The qualifiers are over, and so all of us are real excited to just get on into it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get on into it. We've got some of the best plays for the Americas coming up. Take a look. And so there's some of the top plays coming out of America, the players matching that sort of stuff. We talked a little bit about the teams that qualified last week. Now it's time to jump into the meat and potatoes. Qualifier 2 is done. We know which teams are here, Jam. And a lot of these squads are ready to play. We'll start off with the good old USA and see where these guys are coming out of. We've got Oxygen Esports and Ball Chasers that have really qualified this time around. And I'm really excited specifically for Ball Chasers. You've got Wonder Mike and Magic Bear alongside another teammate. And this is just, it's a youthful, exciting, new roster that's got to be fun to watch.
I mean, even in the name, Ball Chasers, it's a lovely name. It's the fact that they are just, that's their play style. They are on the field after the ball, and I think with the help of Tvaristo, they're going to be doing pretty well. Perhaps, again, not everyone's favorite for this qualifier necessarily, but even still, they managed to make it through Oxygen Esports in the upper bracket. Well, where in the lower, the Oxygen did their job and got that last spot.
Yeah, it's a big deal, actually. Oxygen, Krasik, Tosi, this is a good team. We know this team. But Austin is, this team actually kind of got, let's say, usurped. This is Redall's Explosive Gyro. This is a team that you would expect to make it through.
Yeah, it's a big surprise. Honestly, out of those teams that did not qualify, I would rank this team pretty high against Austin, but they didn't, and they were not the only options. As it stands, we're missing Team Envy, we're missing Space Station Gaming, United, Kansas City Pioneers. There's just not enough spots for everyone to make it, and if you don't make the cut, sorry, there's only 4 spots, and sorry, you're out.
Nice and concise. That's certainly true. The Canadian teams here coming on through, I think, a little bit less competitive, but certainly some strong teams making their way through. Joining Canada and Yazo is going to be Washed Up and Mirage. Washed Up has some of the other teammates, Magic Bear's Alpine teammates here. That's going to be not just Jordan, but also Hard Carry Creams, the super sub. He's been real strong on the Alpine roster. I'm curious to see what he's going to look like for Washed Up. And Mirage, a strong team in their own right.
Yeah, Vegas, Nibra, and Tecos are joining the rest of the Canadian teams for the final qualifier as well. And it is a team that has proven itself just yet on the LCS stage as a whole. But they're here. They're definitely going to be trying their hardest, but in their qualifier, and specifically for Canada, it's going to be pretty tough. Yazo and Canada, their biggest opponents, it feels like, from the first qualifier. Again, we've mentioned Squishy, JNAPS, and Illusion for the side of Yazo, and it is the strongest roster on here and could be the potential opponent for Murica from the US qualifier as well. Out of big absences, though, from Canada, Taroko from Rogue is not playing, but he'll be happy to know that First Killer and Turn Tour, his teammates on Rogue, have qualified through the American qualifier.
Great stuff here coming out from the Great White North. Canada just crushing it. I'm really excited to see these guys kind of stand up. But we'll go from north of the U.S. to south of the U.S. and take a look towards the Mexican teams that have come out. Qualifier number 1 certainly brought out the strong teams, I think. With qualifier number 2, this is where we start to see some new faces. However, Chicharito Hernandez, this is a team that does have some familiar players that you've seen if you've been around the squad.
Yeah, False and Osmo have RLCS experience previously together with their teammate Divisia. I think they're going to be a strong contender for that specific region. And of course, MID and Overnight previously qualifying as well, seemingly. On the day, stronger, really. Ness, Seps, and Kokita specifically from MID roster, to me, feel like a very strong and potent opponent for somebody like Chicharito Hernandez, and of course the final team for that region, Isaacs.
Yeah, so a lot of fun teams kind of making up the Mexican squads. As far as North and Central America are concerned, we've got Monya Esports and Astral Gaming. And I think looking at where these teams kind of come from is real fun. When it comes down to this, it's sort of like everyone else. And so you look for those nations more so than the players. And these are the nations that are standing up, looking at Puerto Rico and Panama. Very, very cool to see some representation.
Yeah, Puerto Rico and Costa Rica actually participating in that and getting those top spots for that qualifier. But Panama, I think, a little bit of a standout. And again, even if you just look at the whole thing, Puerto Rico, Costa Rica, Panama, you would not expect these teams to be on a big stage. Here they are, eager to prove themselves once again, and I would love to see what they can do finally. But first, all of them need to fight against each other. Only one of them can pass through, and that's going to be an interesting one to watch.
That's the fun stuff, is really getting into these regions that aren't normally given access to the big stage, and seeing these players kind of do their thing is absolutely what we've signed up for with the Intel World Open. It's why I'm so excited to kind of be here in competition like this, because it's unlike so many things that we've seen in the past. Now, some of the things that we have seen in the past are the Brazilian players. Brazil's a region that is strong in Rocket League and does stand up pretty heavily. This time around, we've got Chromax and Rebel joining the likes of Lotus and Furioso. And Rebel is a team that comes through full flower power, all squads, all players here. This is the same team that you expect to see in these Brazilian RLCS tournaments. They're here to play.
And you might be familiar with the Rebel more under the name of the Locusts, Astromech Yangs and Snips, but they're still the same old good team, and really one of the top teams that come from Brazil as well. Joining them for that qualifier as well are Chromax, Brad, Lost, and Firefox D. Also incredibly big names on the Brazilian scene. Firefox is a veteran for the scene as well. But their opponents from the first qualifier are the best teams in the region. Furia with Kaio, Card, and Tander. Lotus with Haberkamper, Renan, and Drops. These are the big names in Brazil. But most importantly, what you mentioned, FDOT, is the fact that every single one of these teams have kept their original roster from the SAM region. And it is incredibly important in my book to have that chemistry still going through for a tournament like this.
Absolutely. I mean, that's all. Even the American teams, which I think is the region, the nation most likely to keep everybody together because it's such a large land mass. Brazil is right there as well, where it's a large land mass, so you do get the chance to keep your squads together, and that just has to give you a leg up on some of the competition. That said, they're going up against each other, so it is what it is. From Brazil to Argentina, though, the Argentinian region standing up strong. Ula, Nupampas, and Corey Watchin. I will apologize for my accent, but I won't apologize for the level of talent these guys are bringing. Again, the Argentinians kind of standing up and showing the world on this stage what they're capable of.
Yeah, well, for the most part, it has been Brazil that has been dominating the region for the most part. Argentinian players have been popping up here and there, and just recently, the players on Taka's side, as IGG and Shad, have won basically the whole of the last season of RLCS X, the top league. But now joining them flows from Tabrakai, and Nupampas. I'm going to just take a peek at it as well. And Kordowachin. I mean, I can do better, I suppose. But this, indeed, we're seeing more and more of that quality talent. Somebody that we most likely were not able to see previously. Just like for North America, it's US that dominates the rosters mostly. For South America, it's Brazil that dominates the roster. And there's not always enough spaces for folks from Argentina, from Chile, or from just generally from South America to make those spots. So this is another big spotlight for them. And speaking of Chile, Red and Elite have two new friends.
Ooh, that's absolutely true. Chile, some more teams stepping up here. Bullets and Carton Caruga Don't, which I've been informed is a very funny joke.
Oh, I love it. It's corrugated cardboard, but corrugated cardboard is the best I can put it. Seriously, one of my favorite team names from this whole tournament. There are going to be a couple more coming up later in Germany. And of course, if you have been here with us last week, New Zealand has had an absolute ball with their names, but it's not going to be there just yet. We are still need to look at the rest of South America. And as it stands, we expected a lot of teams from Uruguay to actually make it through, and of course they did through the first two qualifiers, but it is Colombia and Peru that have taken the last two spots. Arctic and Mighty will be those two teams that are going to round up the four that we're going to need for that qualifier.
So a lot of different regions, a lot of different nations kind of represented in our Intel World Open. I think this is, again, I'm going to say it 1,000 times today and 1,000 times when we get into the closed qualifiers. It is just so excellent to see multiple nations, notably some that we don't normally get to see on the RLCS stage. So the IWO here is absolutely my summertime fun for sure. But as we turn the page from open qualifiers, anybody can turn up, to close qualifiers where these are the teams. This is all we're going to see. I mean, these are the conversations that we got to have here. So when we look at outside of North America, I think right away comes Tekis first and foremost, and they might be going up against Furiosa. That is probably a marquee matchup with respect to the SAM region.
Yeah, I would love to see that matchup eventually during the regional. It's going to be the strongest contention over there, specifically one of the top teams, one of the previous top teams from the region, Furiosa or Fury, as you might know them, or know them under many different names. This is a roster has been together for 2 straight years, and so again, the chemistry is just going through the roof. But I would love to see them again versus an Argentinian squad that has been dominating the season so far, but now they've lost one of their players to the Chilean qualifier, and as it stands, it might make or break the team, and I would love to see what the change is. Who is the strongest link on that roster?
That's going to be one to watch. The other one that I'm sure a lot of eyes are going to be all over is the Squishy Garrett matchup. When we look at the USA versus Canadians, Yazo versus Murica, this is the one that I think a lot of fans at home are like, that's where I'm popping the popcorn.
Yeah, if you want to prepare the snacks, if you want to just have one day off and to watch one match out IWO, this should be it. It just doesn't get any better than that. 2 potential winners of the whole regional just battling against each other. This could be the final of the eventual event, and I wouldn't mind it, actually. It has just a marquee name, basically, like this, the big fight, the main event.
I mean, that's the fun part of this show, and we look at taking these teams and kind of like just shaking the ball, right? And just making everything, it's snowing inside, and somebody's going to build that snowman. And looking at energy be split up, you have the audacity to say the best team in North America. I will not put that in concrete, but I don't think you're inherently wrong. And watching these teams split up is going to be definitely the big part that we look forward to here at the IWO. But that locks in all of our conversation about the Americas. Coming up next, we're going to be taking a look at Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. 1 week of qualifiers already down, just like the US. We've got the second one locked in. We'll be right back with all the info. Well, that's Americas. We're going to cross the pond and head over to Europe. Europe is, of course, joined by the Middle East and Africa with respect to the IWO. And so we'll take a look at all of EMEA. One more time, I'm F. That's Jar of Jam. And this is one of the bigger tournaments in Rocket League. We'll zoom in into the UK. So right now, looking at the teams that are qualifying here in week number 2, we've seen Weedem Crumpets and Skelp Esports get on through. Now, last week we saw Fleeksy and then Scouse Loiner make it through. Basically what happened was Weedem Crumpets and Skelp lost to those guys last time. With them out of the business, we just see the 3rd and 4th place teams make it on through.
It's going to be a common occurrence throughout the whole of the tournament for the fact that teams from the first qualifier who did not make it are usually going through the second qualifier with no troubles whatsoever. And it was the same story for UK. With them Crumpets, you might recognize a lot of these player names, basically the whole roster. It's Bluey, Speeder, Rating Wave. Not necessarily teammates on per usual, but still they gathered together, put themselves a name, another one of the variations of Weedem somethings, and got themselves that top spot. Skelp Esports with Tadpole, Kalzafi, and Growly, maybe the minor players on the UK scene, but definitely they have been around and as such are going to make still an impact and already made by qualifying. You might though notice a couple of big absences. You might expect apparently Jack to qualify, Cash to qualify. I would really love for Cash to finally get his break, but as it stands, he just was not having the luck as of recently and still is not having the right luck, but I'd love to see him finally get on the big team and make it work.
I'm excited. I want to see the endpoint guys do their thing. I'm sure Cole and Stumpy are as well, so should see where the UK goes there as they keep chugging along. And we'll hit one of the stronger nations in all of Rocket League right here with France. Last week, I think a lot of people were surprised not to see Team B there. That's Vitality and Ricardo Kaka, members from BDS. Now they're here. So yes, the best of the best with a question mark perhaps, but I have a lot of faith in Team B and Ricardo Kaka to be some of the stronger teams in the world.
Yeah, after the first qualifier, I thought, wow, could it be that one of the strongest teams in the whole qualifier would not make it? Full region, really. And they did at the very end. Thankfully, Team B, or as you might know him, Team Vitality, Firipik, K-Dop, Alpha 54, I don't think they need any introduction. They are the best, some of the best players in Europe, definitely some of the best players in France. And Ricardo Kaka, you might not recognize the name, but the players are still oh so very familiar. You might think about them as Team BDS minor, with Monkey Moon, of course, at the helm of that team, Casio from Top Blokes, and Exotic as the very first last player joining him, and Extra somewhere in reserves. And if Monkey Moon and Extra do combine their forces again, they were the best 2 players on that roster, in my opinion. And if Extra comes back, it feels like there's going to be another incredibly strong team for the French qualifier. And again, there's only one spot, and it's hard to give it to just to one team. But if you want really a favorite, Team B, aka Team Vitality, should be that one.
Yeah, I love the point that you bring up about Monkey Moon kind of squatting up with Extra again. Monkey Moon, a lot of people are going to just say that's the guy, that's the best. Extra is fun to watch. I love the way this guy kind of approaches the game, a little creative, and it slots right perfectly into a player that's just so gifted as Monkey Moon. And so watching them kind of come together, definitely going to be a great look here for the France region, and yeah, definitely expect them to be up on top. But shifting gears from France over to Germany, we'll look at some of these teams here, and I guess the most notable thing about the German teams is the fact that Euronic Gaming features Zeto, one of the veterans of the region.
Yeah, as it stands, Zeto has been around for a really long time, and it's not surprising that he is still around, and it just shows that he, A, does not give up, B, still keeps on the level of the play. He has not been around in the top leagues for quite a while now, but he's still doing his job. Neon and Raziers will be joining them on that roster. And this another team to qualify, though, if that is the oh-so-wonderfully named Donnerfleisch, or Kebab Meat, or Kebab Flesh, which makes it even worse as a team name. But Calyx, Lee Fox, and Cryptos. Cryptos, you might have seen him, of course, on the Train Hard roster, Train Hard Team East. All these names, but neither a right one. Cryptos from the Train Hard Esports roster. They're going to be rounding up that region, and of course, joined from previously by, I would say, some of the strongest players in the German region as well.
I think one of the fun parts about, so I've talked a lot about the underrepresented regions and why that's really fun for the IWO. Again, I said before, I'll say it again. But this is also, I think, another result of a tournament structure like this is the idea that we get to see players like Zeto that were once up here and haven't really, been on top of the world, and whether win or lose, I mean, we get a chance to see them play, and I think that's real fun to kind of look at, and so shout outs to the veterans and shout outs to some of the names that we might see one more time that we just haven't seen in a while. And I'm gonna like that segue, because as we approach the rest of European West, we look towards the Iberian Peninsula, and we look towards Spain, and we look towards some teams marked by 8 and Itachi that didn't make it, which is insane. I think that's the big highlight. Team Queso and E-Team NL make it through, and E-Team NL are the squad that took down Marked by 8, and like I said, that's you're supposed to win.
No, you're supposed to win, but the fact is, it's Mike Boitho and Oli, some of the best players from the Netherlands, and so no surprise they have managed to beat. Honestly, Tho has been just growing from strength to strength just recently, and I feel like he's one of the best players of the country, maybe even of the region if it go as far. And yes, you might expect Marked by 8 and Itachi to do something. You might expect Jorius under the coaching of Violent Panda to also make it in the qualifiers, but no, they did not. And in the end, it's not the ones you were expected, but It is an incredibly competitive place. Europe West has so many great teams already who have qualified at us, with Kuxer, with the Town team, with pretty much the whole White Demons roster. It is so competitive. I cannot pick a team to qualify for that. Everyone has a chance. And of course, Team Kenso, one of the rare teams in the European region who actually kept their full roster for this qualifier, the Mensa, Vicky Salen, Atomic, they have had ups and downs, and some of the analysts consider them to be maybe the bottom of the standing so far. Out of the best teams still in the region, they're still an incredibly powerful force. So keep an eye on every single team that comes out of the Europe West region.
I think that's one of the bigger deals here when we take a look at Europe West, and you mentioned just how competitive this region is. There's only 4 slots available, and so for some regions that's a lot. And for other regions, like I think as we look at the bulk of Europe, we're going to do Europe West, Europe East, and Europe North. When we take these groupings of regions, that's where the 4 teams seem a little short. Like, so it's kind of rough, kind of looking at that. But we'll just see who winds up making it, because you've got to trim the fat. And so we'll shift over into the European East side of things, and well, shout outs to Poland. That's the nation and the team. It's just Poland. And then, of course, the Budapest 5 also coming through representing Hungary. And that's actually a fun team looking at them. Meshin, Negsy, and Coke. This is a squad that really kind of stood up and really performed well.
Yeah, Negsy and Kokon, for those of you who have been following this region specifically, are going to be incredibly familiar names. They're the veterans of their respective regions, about 5 or 6 years, not only playing Rocket League, but honestly playing together on and off. So another great duo that's going to be providing a lot of chemistry for this roster. And Poland, you might recognize one of the very, very familiar names on that team. It's Virtuoso. While he lives in UK, while he has some Nigerian ancestry, I do believe, still his homeland is Poland, and as such he's playing for a Polish team. So do keep an eye out for his physical style of play on the field as he starts to compete in those qualifiers. And of course, Europe North. That is another region that I would say is chock full of veterans. These are, as I look at the roster, I look and say, yeah, I know them. Yes, I've seen these players play for like the past 3 or 4 years. They're constantly being on the top of their respective region. They're constantly trying to make it into the top leagues. And so it's no surprise that A3 Esports has Fireman Jonas, has Seeb, has Inferno. You might have seen these players at one time or another playing in the European tournaments, and they're here again. For Nordavent, the team has been constantly coming back and forth into the sport. Trex is my standout player. He has been tremendous in some of the European leagues. He has the skill ceiling that is tremendous, but he just needs a really great team to show it. And perhaps this could be yet another chance for him.
And even if it's not, here's something fun as well. Another sort of result of the IWO. This is also technically an audition for every single player playing. Rocket League is a giant game with, I mean, let's just call a shovel, a lot of money involved. And people will move. We've got Itachi moving to Spain. We've got Turbo Pulsa moving across to the U.S. And, of course, rumors of Realize last year could come back one more time. You know, there are players that have done this. And so every single one of these players, whether they're in an underrepresented region or even when it comes down to like these European North and these groupings, these are players that don't always get the spotlight. And right now, like I said, a technical audition for everyone that's ever looked at the RLCS.
It has been a pleasure to watch these teams just work their way through their local tournaments, but this is the big deal. The big leagues really almost doesn't get any bigger than this. You're in the front of the world and playing your best Rocket League, at least attempting to play your best Rocket League. Well, you need to either put it or just get out.
Put it or push it, absolutely. Europe kind of puts a bow on that, and now we shift over to the ME section, the Middle East. Sandrock Gaming, empty. They qualified last time. That's arguably number 1 and number 2. And number 3 in the region, well, that's Falcons Esport. They come through and qualify alongside the Ultimates, and Middle East, I think, is my most excited. I always get very excited about this region. SRG has always really piqued the interest of everybody that pays attention to Rocket League. The Middle East doesn't get to be a part of the RLCS yet, and at the moment, these teams are always very exciting to catch on a stage like this.
Well, we've already talked in length about Sandrock Gaming last time, and there's no doubt that they are still on top of our minds. Favorites to win the Middle Eastern qualifier as well, and they are just some of the most exciting teams to watch. Another roster that has been together for a long time, but we already talked about them last week, so let's talk about the two teams that did qualify this time. Falcons and the Ultimates. Really? We've talked about like top 3 qualifying. I would say this basically rounds out the top 4 for Middle East.
Yeah.
You could switch those teams around just a little bit, but it really doesn't matter at the big side of things. The Zonics, Hamazin, and AMS for the Ultimate side, very capable players. And specifically on the Falcons side, I want to point out TRK. Yes, his teammates Faisal, Ali, and Venom are really great. TRK recently absolutely popping off in ones. Not just against anyone, I do believe against the Ahmed of Sandrock Gaming, or OK Khaled, or really anyone on the Sandrock Gaming is an incredibly good 1v1 player, and TRK recently has been dominating his opponents.
That's what you can do on the ones field. You join them with Venom and Faisal, like you mentioned, and I mean, this is all of a sudden a game that you've really got to pay attention to. And again, if you are a Rocket League enthusiast, you're familiar with these players, and if you're just sort of diving in, first of all, welcome, and second of all, these are the up-and-comers, the bubble players. This is the bubble region, and so the Middle East is certainly right in the middle of all the action here. But that leaves A, M, E, and A, right, Africa. That's where we're at right now. All 4 teams coming out of Africa, qualifying out of South Africa specifically. Pirates XD, meh. That was week number 1, and then week number 2 is Mist Esports and MLGC Atomic, MLGC being an organization in their own right.
Well, just for a second, FDOT, I thought that you said meh about Pirate 6D, and there's no meh about that roster. Strongest team in South Africa so far, been so for 3 years, but they are joined by, I would say, the expected teams. There might have been a little bit of a question about whether MLGC Atomic should have qualified. There was another team that tried to make it through, but they didn't, and just makes it, again, for the closeness of the region as a whole. But Mist Esports with Biscuit Galaxy, Daisy, and Bread, a bit of a food-themed team by the looks of it. Wow. And of course, MLGC Atomic with Yopego, Wee Hasper, and Echo will be the final teams and players for that region. I would really love to see some more teams from other countries in Africa. We have been taking a look at a couple of Egyptian teams as well, and they seem to be like the second strongest country coming out from Africa. Not this time, but maybe next one.
Yeah, Egypt, Itachi is Moroccan, and so Morocco certainly has a couple of capable players as well. And so as we see more infrastructure and just more open game tournaments like this, because that's also a big thing, is when we realize, when we look at the main regions, North America, Europe, SAM, Oceania, these are regions that have support, not just in, well, there's play, but you have a league The more you play against good players, the better you get, and you rise and rise and rise. And so the reason we say underdeveloped nations or underdeveloped regions with respect to Rocket League is because there's only one team that doesn't necessarily get to play against each other. There isn't an organized play that doesn't get to happen. And so the IWO gives everybody a chance to really level themselves up and, like I said, put themselves on stage for everyone to see. And so that locks down our look at Americas, that locks down our look at Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Coming up next, we're going to focus a little bit on Asia, the mainland, and the maritime. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back, friends. It's now time to talk about Asia. We've got Asia and the rest of Oceania to rock down as well. FDOT and Jam continuing to keep on keeping on, and Japan is where we are going to start. And so out of Japan, we've seen Tokyo Verdy. That's kind of the numero uno team to take a look at there. But here we've got Zephyrs and Doggo, which I really just like the team name. I
couldn't take it away from you, FDOT. You just give FDOT a Doggo and he'll be a happy man. But those are indeed the two extra rosters that are going to be joining the fray. As it stands, one of the strongest teams in the region, of course, Tokyo Verdy takes that #1 spot, and there's absolutely no doubt about why they're a quality team, have been for a long time. But there is tons of quality in Mikan Badlane and Nemoto Putty. That's the Doggo roster. And Zephyrs have been up and down. They have been participating in local tournaments as well. Really, all of these teams, you might have seen them previously, have been following the likes of APL Nationals. Rosetta Arch and Plasma. Maybe not the familiar names from the Japan region, but they're still representing Zephyrs on this occasion, and it should be a tough opponent for whoever they're going to be playing against in their qualifier.
I mean, even taking a look at some of the clips that we've got right in front of us, I'm seeing a lot of the right things, having a backup play, having a follow-up player, going and trusting your teammates for the passing plays, and these are the fundamentals that really start to make you a strong Rocket League player. We can show you double taps all day, ha ha ha, but really, like, when I see the team working with each other, I think that's really what kind of turns the page for me and going, oh, all right. So we've got something. So the Japanese region rounding out here with their 4 teams, certainly cool. One more time, shout out to Zephyrs and Doggo. Really just wanted an excuse to say it a second time, so thank you very much. We're going to move on here to the rest of the Asian mainland, and here we've got Singapore standing up. 2 teams, Spite and Ooga Booga, kind of rocking it and making themselves known. And it's worth noting that because of the 2 Singapore teams, we don't see any Indian teams, and India is actually a pretty strong nation.
You would actually expected one of the Indian teams to make it through FDOT. They have been a powerful force in the region. One of their top teams that expected to qualify, Taipan Esports, you might recognize Hargan as one of their players. They are the winners of the Indian National Championship, yet did not qualify, and no Indian team did qualify despite having a big presence both in the qualifier and, again, as I mentioned, in the whole region as well. So if you want to look for surprises, here's one. And Spite, the team that did qualify and #1 spot for that qualifier, they were a bit of a surprise for all the analysts involved, but they're here. They want to show up the best Rocket League they can possibly can, and they'll be doing just that. Their opponents, though, pretty tough ones. 3 Rats and Unsons, the folks who have qualified for the first time, they are some of the strongest teams from that respective region. So it's not going to be an easy battle, and maybe that's the reason why Spite did not manage to qualify for their first time.
Last week, the guys from liked how much fun I had with their team name, so I just had to give them a shout out myself. So we'll be watching, and I'm sure we'll be listening as well. And as far as Australia is concerned, Space One and Yabempty is going to be joining the teams here, FMF and Brain Chasers. And so Australia is a region that we get to see sometimes in that OCE region with respect to the RLCS, the Pro League. But interesting that, again, there are some teams that are left off.
Well, we still have the best teams for the region coming back. Just like France initially for the first qualifier, teams that did make it through, the likes of LG Direwolves, were not considered to be the strongest teams. Really, it has been. You have to look down the order to figure out where these teams come from. Of course, especially with the cool names that they give themselves. But for the second qualifier, the order has been restored. And even if you don't recognize the names of Space One in the Yabempty, you know who Ground Zero Gaming and Cringe Society are. Amphistorces and Express for Ground Zero have been absolutely groundbreaking this season, dominating the region as a whole. And Cringe Society have been toe-in-toe with their opponents and continuously making up the best of the situation. The name might be interesting, to say the least, but obviously Drippy and Jules are quality players and will be growing from season to season. So two incredibly competitive teams, but once again, only one spot. Oh, how I wish we could give them more space, but no, there's only one spot, and it's going to be one hell of an exciting qualifier to watch.
Jules, actually, personal note, just one of my favorite players to watch in the non-NAE region. I think they're fantastic. So should be fun stuff watching them kind of make their moves. As we take a look to New Zealand, okay, so originally we had the ultimate epic, awesome New Zealand team. The Alphas came through. But now we have the New Zealand ultimate team and the ultimate New Zealand team. So shout outs to New Zealand for some naming conventions here, but what's in a name?
Well, maybe not so familiar players. New Zealand is a region that, of course, participates in Oceania, RLCS, and as far they are making do with their performances. But these are not necessarily going to be the players that you're going to recognize. As it stands, Cammy and CGM, the top players for New Zealand, have qualified already for the first time through the epic, awesome, ultimate, all these platitudes that they've given their team name. But New Zealand ultimate team has Joshua and Moss, and ultimate New Zealand team, oh god, Kenny Salmon, though. What's in the name? If you wanted a name, Kenny Salmon is a fantastic name. Cartoon Remake also rounding up that roster. They're not going to be necessarily the strongest out of the region, but as the story has been through the whole of these open qualifiers for IWO, it is the time for players we have not known about, have not heard about, to show something, to make themselves known, to let us know that, oh, okay, Kenny Salmon is a thing. We might need to be watching that player now.
Exactly, and as the scene just gets larger and larger, Rocket League this year has been really eclipsing some of the highest highs as far as numbers and players and viewers are concerned. It just becomes more and more interesting. I'm sure there are chief gaming officers out there that are checking out the IWO and checking out these players, and Asia Maritime is certainly no slouch either. We've got Best Defenders Asia and Warteg Baroka coming through here, qualifying. And out of these teams, again, some of these players a little bit unknown. Squirrel has been one of the names on the radar. And really, even when we talk about some players that we sort of know, that's kind of all that we know, is that some locals have kind of sort of told us, hey, watch out for Squirrel. And so that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, Squirrel might be familiar to, again, the followers of the esports, specifically the Asian side of esports, as he has played previously for the likes of 1NE esports. They have rosters actually all over Asia, and Indonesian rosters is one of their perhaps strong parts. Of course, now currently looking at another player from some of those rosters. It is, of course, Ripupi, who has qualified with Broccoli for this time, but he's currently away from that team. This is a region that has, for the most part, again, has been underrepresented, but it's definitely a strong part of the fact that all teams that have qualified through this particular qualifier, Asia Maritime, are all Indonesian. So you might need to watch out for this region, just like with the rest of Asia mainland, just like with the Japan that is seen here and there. It is a region that needs to be watched and might be the next one to show up on the main big stage.
That's what we're here for. That's what we're looking at. You know, I've mentioned the Middle East time and time again. It's awesome to see some Asia Maritime kind of be standing up and taking a look towards there. But Jam, that's That's it. It's all done now. Our open qualifiers are done and dusted. We know who's going to play. 4 teams from each nation, locked and loaded. And so, now I get comfortable. Okay, now I'm chilling, feet up, hair in the breeze. It's up right now, but I'm not going to take it down. We're just kind of talking about the games. I'm excited to look towards closed qualifiers, see all that happen. But, when it comes down to the open qualifiers, everybody kind of jumps in. There are some surprises. And so surprising to see some of these teams kind of show up. I think if you ask me who I was most surprised to see, I literally did this to you before, it's the Raging Raccoons. This team from France, definitely a little surprising.
Yeah, Maivik Isai and Econ, you wouldn't expect that team to be on the forefront of that qualifier, and yet they were the top team to qualify from France during the first week. They are really the team with a lot of potential, perhaps. They are just like, really, you look everywhere. It is young players here, young players there. This is young players game, Rocket League. But they were if you want an underdog, if you want someone who is looking like, what are they doing here? How did they progress before Team Vitality and parts of Team BDS did? Well, you continue watching, you might as well find out.
Hey man, age is but a number. Shouts to Pasha. Listen, you can keep on keeping on. And so, fun to see the Raging Raccoons kind of stand up. A little surprising to see them in. But I think what a lot of people want to talk about is who didn't make it. Because with only 4 slots, sure, some of the lesser known regions, everybody gets to stand up and have a party. But when it comes to some of the regions that we know and love, that's where we get to see a lot of notable players not make the cut. I've mentioned Mark by 8 and Itachi a number of times, but there have been a bunch of other players that I think a lot of people were excited to maybe see on the big stage that we're just not going to get a chance to see.
And of course, we have already mentioned a couple of them. On the side of North America, a big region, well represented in the top leagues, the RLCS, and we did not see teams, like full-on teams, qualify. Space Station Gaming, Reddles, one of the most surprising players to fail to qualify for the whole tournament. United, Kansas City Pioneers, so much quality, and yet they did not make it through. I also want to make a little point out about the potential new and up-and-comers, the maybe future wonder kids. You might never know. Two Piece, if you haven't been watching his rise in the North American Rocket League, is one of those players. And Daniel, who I don't believe had a chance to play, but Daniel is currently considered one of the best potential, youngest players who are going to make it big next season. Some people have even considered them to be a top 10 player in North America right now. And that's a player who has never played on the RLCS team, a player that has never really made it big. But it might be a name that you might want to be watching out for the rest of, really for the next couple of years, definitely in the next season of RLCS as well.
Well, the next couple of weeks, we've got our closed qualifiers kind of going ahead. It's going to be a chock full of action week up ahead. It all starts June 21st, so you don't want to miss it. Again, when it comes down to these closed qualifiers, this is where all the action is really happening. You want to catch every single game. And so as far as teams to watch, the whole thing. Make sure you have your eyes glued because you don't want to miss any of the action. Jam, it's been an absolute pleasure having you alongside, nailing all the X's and O's. Me, I'm just here to say ha-ha. So, ha-ha. Thank you for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. We'll catch you guys again June 21st. The closed qualifiers begin. You don't want to miss it. Peace and much love to you.